Hello! Welcome to Levels Plus Weekly, episode 57. Pocky and Rocky Reshrined is the topic at hand today. But we're also going to go through some of the developer, Tengo Project's, past work, as well as talk a bit about Natsume Atari and that confusing mess of what is Natsume and what is Natsume Atari. And I think I have mentioned multiple times at this point that Pocky and Rocky Reshrined is my most anticipated game of 2022. Unfortunately, despite launching tomorrow, I won't be playing it till September because I ordered the collector's edition from Strictly Limited. That's when they're shipping it. And I am not in a place financially to buy games twice. So, unfortunately for me, I'm going to have to wait a few months to actually play this game, but reviews that have come out already for it have basically confirmed what I already suspected, that it is in the tradition of Tengo Project's past work in being an exemplary remaster, remake, sequel to their legendary works that they had done in the past. So, that's all fantastic news, but unfortunately, I'm going to have to wait a little bit to actually give you some reaction about how I feel about the game itself. But for today's purposes, I want to talk about this developer. I want to talk about Tengo Project. I want to talk about Natsume Atari. I want to talk about what games they've done that have absolutely wowed me and why they are one of my most beloved developers in the industry today. So let's quickly run through some history. So Natsume. Trying to untangle Natsume is so difficult. So I'm going to just do my best, because looking at the Wikipedia page for Natsume is a nightmare. I need to write something on this to actually make something a little bit more cohesive and coherent to follow. But they started on the Famicom as a subcontractor. They did have a couple original properties. Their first game, I believe, is Idol Hankenden, which was for Toei Chica. But they're better known for their games Power Blade and its sequel, Shatterhand, Abanax, Shadow of the Ninja, and Scat, aka Special Cybernetic Attack Team. It should be SCAT, but nobody ever probably calls it that. But they did a lot of licensed games as well back in this early period. Shatterhand, for example, was a licensed game, Chojin Sentai Jetman, if I recall correctly. And when it was localized by Jalico, it became Shatterhand. They also did the Heroes of the Lance game for the NES in Famicom, which was probably the first game of theirs that actually came over to America. So Natsume kind of continued on this path of publishing a couple things here and there, which was SCAT and Shadow of the Ninja. Some games for the Game Boy and Super Nintendo, but they kind of got involved with Taito pretty early. So they originally created Power Blazer for Taito, which I believe was their first game working together, which was localized into Power Blade. And then from there, the two kept a really strong connection together, which led to the Lufia games being localized, because those were originally Taito games. Them getting handed the rights to Kiki Kakai and the Ninja Warriors to make Super Nintendo sequels of those. And around this period in the Super Nintendo days, Natsume Atari split from Natsume proper. So I think the majority of, I would say Americans at least, when they hear Natsume, they think of Harvest Moon, which did get its start in the Super Nintendo days. But that was only a small piece of the Natsume puzzle. And a lot of that puzzle ended up going with Natsume Atari, not Natsume Co. Limited, who is the publisher of Harvest Moon, and is basically the publishing piece of Natsume. Natsume Atari is now an independent enterprise that still works with Natsume to make games and have them publish stuff, but they are not connected as the same company anymore. And then it gets even more confusing when you think of Harvest Moon and how Marvelous, who was the developer for many of those games, decided to branch off and do Story of Seasons, which is the actual original Harvest Moon, and then Natsume had to figure out how to continue using the brand name. It's very complicated. Like I said, I should write something about this. But Natsume Atari kind of mellowed out after the GBA DS. They haven't published or developed a ton of games since then. Probably because of rising development costs. But Tengo Project. Tengo Project, 3 key people from Natsume's glory days of this developer side that's outside of Harvest Moon, that did SCAT, Shadow of the Ninja Warriors, Pocky and Rocky, Wild Guns, all of these games, they still exist in Natsume Atari. And the 3 primary people who have led Tengo Project are Shunichi Tanauchi, who is the graphic and gameplay designer, Toshiyasu Miyabe, who is a programmer, and Hiroyuki Iwatsuki, who is programmer and composer. And Iwatsuki has composed a lot of Natsume's games, including all of the ones that have been remade or redone for the Tengo Project games. Tengo Project's first game was actually an original title called Omega 5, which was an Xbox Live Arcade game, which magically just got recently re-released for those who get onto the Xbox platform. And then from there, they did Wild Guns Reloaded, which, here we go. Here's the Switch version of this game. And Wild Guns Reloaded is a really strong example of where Tengo Project is now. I switched over so we can watch a little bit of gameplay about these games while I talk about them. So Wild Guns Reloaded takes the Natsume Super Nintendo behind-the-back shooter classic that is really, really good on its own and takes it up to 11. You can now play with 4 players. There's 2 additional characters. The graphics have been completely overhauled to have a higher def look, but still reflect this beautiful sprite space style that Natsume Atari had done in the original game. And basically, this is what Tengo Project does, is that they take these classic games that they had already made and then just finds a perfect balance of keeping the legacy, the intention, the feel of the originals, but adding the type of features and enhancements and quality of life features that you would want out of these types of games. And honestly, it's amazing that this game exists, because you do not see games get this type of treatment, especially cult classic games that don't have like the Nintendo reverence, for example, or the Capcom reverence, or the Konami reverence. When you think about 8 and 16-bit games, you don't immediately think Wild Guns, I'm sure, unless you are super into it, or you love this style of shooter, or you just have a thing for cult classic games. This is awesome that Natsume Atari was able to do this and have it published, and it stands as one of the finest remakes of a 16-bit era game that I can personally think of, which is what Tengo Project continuously has done. Which leads me to one of my absolute favorite games of all time. The Ninja Saviors, Return of the Warriors, or as it is known in Japan, the Ninja Warriors once again. Now, NN, who decided to step in and publish this game because they're a close association with Taito, probably didn't want to get the copyright holders of the American Ninja Warriors TV series to give them any problems. So they just decided to call it something different and reflect its origins. The Ninja Saviors is a greatly enhanced remake of the Super Nintendo Ninja Warriors, which came out via Taito around 93, 94, I want to say. And again, the core development team in Natsume Atari ended up reworking on this game because they were the same devs. So we have the same 3 people at Tengo Project coming back together to bring us a brand new enhanced version of this rare Super Nintendo game that is very difficult to find and was really good. And the best part about Ninja Saviors is that it is still incredibly good, but is now even better. It has a 2-player mode that was not available in the original game. It also adds 2 more characters. It seems to be a tradition for Tengo Project titles to add 2 more characters to the roster. So now you have 5 playable options to play this game. On top of that, hugely enhanced visuals, the ability to listen to the soundtracks of the arcade Ninja Warriors, the Super Nintendo Ninja Warriors, or the remastered soundtrack, redone for this game, which is incredible. It's one of my favorite soundtracks on the Switch, honestly, because it just has such a great high energy feel to it. But this game is just gorgeous to look at in motion, and it is incredibly fun to play. This is my favorite beat 'em up of all time, without a question. And I could probably spend a lot more time talking about this game, but the best part about the Ninja Saviors is its gameplay feel. With the 5 characters, they all control differently. They all have a screen-clearing bomb attack, but outside of that, they all have their own feel. So we've seen 3 of the characters who originally appeared in the Super Nintendo game, and you can already see that they kind of do things differently. Our current cyborg ninja here, which technically they all are, but he's the most cyborg-looking of them all, is more of an aerial fighter. He excels in the air. Kinouchi is a speedier fighter, but she has a lot of juggle opportunities and can bounce from character to character, which is rad. And Ninja was originally like this strong one, but now he's kind of average because of Raiden, who is a huge mech character. And then we have a grappler with this character who's Yashka, I think her name is, who has these long arms that she can attack in very interesting ways, but she also excels up close and likes to throw a lot of characters. She's a lot of fun to play as. These new characters don't feel like they are just brand new, added in with no thought put into them. The game has been designed around the original 3 plus the extra 2, and they all are a dream to control. This game is so much fun. It truly, truly is a masterful work in the genre that takes a game that was awesome. I mean, just look at that combo right there. Here's our giant mech. That you can just hop into this game and play it, and it just feels good. The one thing about Ninja Saviors that still I have a hard time remembering is the block, because you hold the attack button to block, and it's hard for me to remember that it's there, but the block is very effective. But look at this gigantic character. Like, it's obscene how big this character is. But he's here, and he's doing whatever he wants. But because of his huge size, he has a disadvantage when he gets swarmed, which I think is one of the big things about him, is that he does a ton of damage and can hit things from really far away. But because he's so big, he can get swarmed really easily. I love this game. I think this is one of the greatest games of all time, in my opinion, and truly deserves more acclaim than it gets. So if you haven't picked up Ninja Savior's Return of the Warriors yet, I almost insist. I almost insist that you get this game, because it is going to impress you. So, let's move into the game that is this episode's main feature, which is Pocky and Rocky Reshrined. Now, this is a very short trailer, but I did want to at least have the trailer air real quick, so that way I can show you what it looks like, because this is arguably the most beautiful game Tengo Project has done yet, and that's saying a lot, because both Wild Guns and Ninja Saviors are incredible. But I also feel that once this trailer's done, I need to get into a little bit of history about the entire Kiki Kakai series. Kiki Kakai is the Japanese name for Pocky and Rocky, and the original came out in arcades in, I want to say, 1986. And then was followed by a Famicom port in 87, which is a port in a very loose sense. It's not like tight 100% accurate to the game it's based on, but it follows a lot of the same gameplay conventions, just in a Famicom format with, I think there's some light RPG elements. They changed up the maps, it's a little bit more exploratory. The game was then ported to the PC Engine in a more accurate to arcade rendition, and then the series kind of went quiet. There were a lot of cameos to it in Taito games. I know that Rainbow Island refers to Kiki Kakai. Space Invaders 94 refers to it. But in terms of actual new games in the series, it wasn't until Natsume Atari asked if they could continue the series on the Super Nintendo. And they created two brand new Kiki Kakai games in Japan, which managed to get localized by Natsume, the publisher, as Pocky and Rocky. And Pocky and Rocky 2. Two of the rarest, most expensive games to buy on Super Nintendo, because they are the definition of cult classics, and they are extremely good. And I would love to play them, and I'm hoping that Reshrined does really well, and that we will see re-releases of the original Super Nintendo games at some point down the road, because Natsume has been doing that for other games that they have. Of course, they have to work it out with Taito to do that, but my hopes are that that will happen. So both of those games happen. They do pretty well in terms of cult classic status, but they didn't sell a ton. In fact, Natsume had boxed copies that they auctioned off a few years ago on eBay for $1,600, I think is what I read on Wikipedia about it. One last Pocky and Rocky game was released on the Game Boy Advance, Pocky and Rocky with Becky. This one is not as well liked as the Super Nintendo games, but it did bring back Mayu-chan from the Famicom game as Becky. And that one is actually purchasable on the Wii U eShop. So if you have any interest in that, you can at least figure out a way to get credit onto your eShop account on the Wii U and pick that up for $8. And then that was it for a long time. A company called Starfish tried to get the Kiki Kakai license to create a Wii sequel, but lost it midway through development. So the game eventually came out as Heavenly Guardian and was not very well liked. And then Tengo Project, after finishing Ninja Saviors, decided to revisit Pocky and Rocky Kiki Kakai And we now have Reshrined, which is coming out in North America and Europe tomorrow. I am very pumped for this game. I think it's going to be great. I do want to give a huge shout out. If you want to know a ton about Tengo Project, Natsume Atari, and the Kiki Kakai Pocky and Rocky series, this Digital Foundry Retro EX episode that they did last month is splendid. Absolutely splendid. I will play just like a few seconds of it so you can kind of see what they're doing. But this is a review of the game, but it also gives a very, very thorough history of the entire enterprise of Kiki Kakai, Tengo Project, and a little bit of what Natsume Atari is about. So my video can be considered like a cliff notes. But I do want to do an actual article on examining this in more detail, because I think the story behind Natsume Atari and Tengo Project is absolutely fascinating. And the games that they have made since branding as Tengo Project have all been among the very best retro titles you can ask for out of anything. They just nail the classic updated vibe, where they take what was iconic and amazing about the originals and then just take it up like to 100. It's incredible. So check out that video. It'll be in the description. Highly recommend it. Look forward to my Natsume Atari piece in a little while. But for now, I think we'll go ahead and call this episode done, because I basically espoused everything that I am jazzed about in regards to Pocky and Rocky Reshrined without playing it. And since that's not going to be for a few months, I don't want to belabor the point. So I want to thank you for joining me today on my little hype month train. And in a couple days, we'll get into Capcom Fighting Collection, the last game that I am personally really jazzed about for June, as our conclusion to Hype Month. So I hope you will join me for that. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you so much again for watching, and have a great day.